be a ding.
Ding, okay.
Good morning. It is good to see you all. I feel like I've been gone for months. It's only been a couple of weeks, but it's great to be back. I'm the Reverend Ellem Quaadgras, and I serve in co-ministry here at South Church with Kirsten Hunter, our Director of Lifespan Ministry, and together we support all of you in your ministries to each other and to a wider world. I want to welcome you to this place where we invite you to take the risk of bringing more of your whole self, your outspokenness and your shyness, your clarity and your confusion, your kindness and your, I'm actually feeling a little grumpy today, thank you very muchness. I want to welcome all of you, whether you are here in person or online, to this time when we come together to notice how we are, to remember who we are, and to remember that we belong. Everyone belongs. You, each of you in particular, belong, no matter what any of your brains might be saying about I'm the one exception. It's not true. Everyone belongs. I want to particularly welcome those of you for whom this is your first or second time. I am glad you're here with us. You particularly belong. I've always liked the idea that the newcomer is the most important person in the room, so I hope that you will say hello after the service and join us for coffee downstairs afterwards. If you want to sign up for the newsletter or learn more about us, there is, I believe, a card in your pew. You can fill that out and hand it to an usher or to me. We have large print hymnals in the back and assistive listening devices. Ushers can help you with either one. And right after our time for all ages, if this is your first time, feel free to accompany your young one as they go down the stairs to sign them in for religious education classes. I want to acknowledge and thank everyone who is part of the service today. Lissa, Mascio, our worship associate, who will be joining me up here today. Jonny, Peiffer, and Susan Adams on music, as well as Jen Leydens, who's right here, and Cathy, Okhuysen. Kirsten is leading our time for all ages, and Ben on tech, and so many others behind the scenes. We do this work together. So here today we come together in our shared humanity with all its color and its stickiness to catch a breath, take in a wider view, take in comfort and love, truth and challenge, including the truth and challenge offered by the land acknowledgement we have begun to include every week. Today, in honor of Martin Luther King Sunday, I will be offering a more inclusive one, and I will be sharing that right before the invocation. I invite you to silence your cell phone now as we listen to some announcements.
Indeed. Good morning, I'm Kirsten Hunter. It's lovely to be here with all of you. A few announcements for us, but as always, please read your order of service. There's a few that I won't mention. There's always so much information in here, so take a look as you are here with us this morning. The ones that I'd like to lift up, one is there's these beautiful plants in the back of the room, and they could be yours. Any one of you are welcome to take a gorgeous, robust red and green beauty of a poinsettia home with you at the end of service today. Also, tomorrow is MLK Monday, and there's an incredible program happening here at South Church. It starts at 8:30 in the morning with breakfast and goes through noon. So the breakfast is 8:30 to 10. Programming starts at 10. I believe that there is no charge, but you can make donations as part of your joining in that programming. Please come and be here with us for that wonderful morning. And our annual meeting, if you are a member of South Church, you may or may not know, if joining us today, that our congregation and our faith is a self-governing faith. In other words, this congregation are the ones who make the decisions about how everything happens here at South Church. And so we have an annual meeting where a lot of those decisions are finalized and voted on, and that's coming up on January 28th if you're a member of the congregation. And I also would just love to show off some of my favorite people at South Church who have something else to tell you. So come on up here. This is a group of folks from our senior youth, and I'll pass this to Ash.
Good morning. We are selling chili and chocolate as a fundraiser for our senior youth service learning trip to New Mexico. We have a lot of flavors and sizes, so come downstairs after the service to buy chili and chocolate.
That chili is frozen since New Year's, right on New Year's, from the sale. So some of you even made that chili thank you, and you can now come get dinner for tonight or tomorrow or anytime this week. So yeah, come support the youth.
I'd like to invite you to take a moment to center yourself in land acknowledgement with these words adapted from Ana Maria de la Rosa. So take a moment to center yourself, not as a function of ownership or reclamation, not as an empty exercise with no accountability, but rather as a continuation of our role as stewards of this place and this land. Let us acknowledge and thank the original caretakers of this land, the Pennacook and Wabanaki people. And let us ask ourselves what steps each of us can personally take toward justice and reconciliation. And if you don't yet know, allow the question to live in you until you do. Let us say to our native kin, you are still here. We will not erase you. Let us also thank the African hands and bodies that have toiled the land we are on, a role forced on them originally through enslavement. Thank them for the seeds they brought over hidden and braided in their hair, seeds that still sustain us. May we have gratitude for the farming and stewarding wisdom we have inherited and continue to learn from. This place that carries their blood, sweat, and tears. Ask yourself what steps you can personally take toward reparations. If you don't know, allow the question to live in you until you do. Honor the memory of these men and women in humble gratitude. And finally, take a moment to acknowledge that you, too, are land. You are a continuation of the story of place. Interrupt the belief that there is separation between you and nature. You are land personified. To be stewards of this land includes protecting your heart as fiercely as you would the redwoods, a beehive, the ocean. To admit we are land means we commit to tending each other as well. In this moment, ask yourself, what steps are necessary toward tenderly tending yourself and each other? Let us hold these questions and thoughts in heart and mind as we move deeper into our time together with the music of our invocation.
Circle round for freedom, circle Circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole.
Good morning, everyone. It's really lovely to be back here in the sanctuary with everyone after the holidays, and for those of us joining us online, I invite you to light your own candle at home while Reverend Ellem lights the chalice here in the sanctuary. Our theme for the month of January is Liberating Love, which seems particularly fitting on this day that we celebrate the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. So I bring you these words by Dr. King from a rare handwritten note. Love is the greatest force in the universe. It is the heartbeat of the moral cosmos. He who loves is a participant in the being of God. Now, if you would please stand as you are able and join me in reciting our mission statement, which is in your order of service or on your screen today. At South Church, we nurture spiritual growth through worship, learning, and community. We celebrate the worth and dignity of all people, and we inspire one another to act on our faith in the larger community. Writer Jennifer Williamson has said, "You plant seeds every single day, in the world and in others, with every thought you think and word you speak and action you take. You have influence. You're making a dent in the universe, and you matter in a very real way." My brothers and I lived with my grandparents in Queens, New York, when I was little. Being at the formative ages in 3 and 4 at the time, some of my very earliest memories are of living with them, learning how to tie my shoelaces perched on the kitchen table, stirring chocolate pudding at the stove with my grandmother, standing on this weird, ugly blue folding stool that my aunt still has to this very day. But some of my happiest memories were of my grandfather. He was an old school gentleman of the generation that still wore a collared shirt when gardening or mowing the lawn, and they had one of those non-motorized old push mower things. They had a coveted corner lot in Belrose, New York, and he grew the most beautiful roses. My grandfather was an engineer by trade, but by the time I was living there, he was in retirement, and he was a gardener. He actually worked part-time at the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens, or maybe he was a volunteer. I was only 3, so who knows. But I remember doing cartwheels around the lawn while he lovingly tended to his garden. To me, he was a soft-spoken, gentle, bespectacled gentleman, but he had been fiery, and I always think of him around Martin Luther King Day. My grandfather was a proud socialist and a union organizer back in the 1930s New York City, running on the socialist ticket with a black man, a brave move for an Italian immigrant in that day, and one that actually got him blacklisted in the 1950s, forcing him to go back to Italy for a short time with my youngest aunt and uncle to find work. He passed down to me a lot of literature about unions and capitalism and socialism, and the seeds of that burning passion for social justice and my fellow man. The love between a grandchild and a grandparent is a liberating kind of love, one born less of obligation and more of opportunity. And we had a lot of opportunity in those 2 years. That relationship has a lot less pressure to be something specific, but rather a margin of error to just explore and enjoy. I remember that time of my life as relatively carefree. And over the years, I've always felt a certain kinship with my grandfather and a certain level of acceptance from him about who I was, just as I was. And although Grandpa did not pass down his green thumb to me, he did plant in me seeds of social justice, empathy, and compassion that have been guideposts not only for my career, but the way that I choose to live my life, and hopefully the values of love and acceptance I have passed down to my own daughter. I look forward to having my own grandchild someday and to experience that liberating love and plant more seeds of acceptance and change in that next generation. I will leave you with this thought by Steve Maraboli. Acceptance makes an incredible fertile soil for the seeds of change. Now, if you could please rise as you're able and join me in the opening hymn in the teal hymnal, number 1018, and we're going to do the first 3 verses.
And come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound.
So, I have a story to share. If there's anyone who would like to hear the story from a little closer up, you're welcome to come sit up on the floor with me. I love company when I'm telling stories, and I love being able to check out everybody's outfits and what they brought with them to church today. So this is a story that was passed, this is an adaptation from a story that was passed on to me from Reverend Ellem. I don't know who wrote the original version, but I've changed it so much I don't think it actually matters. But this is a story about a woman. There was once a woman who longed for peace in the world and for peace in her heart. And she was feeling pretty frustrated. The world seemed to be falling apart. When she would open the newspaper in the morning, her heart would break a little bit. And when she would watch the TV at night, her heart would break a little bit more. She found herself walking through her days, wringing her hands and feeling sort of hopeless. Now, one day, she decided to go shopping at the local mall. The local mall used to be a really busy place, but these days the local mall is not so busy. And she walked in and it was like she hadn't been there in so long, she really didn't recognize much around her. And as she was walking through different shops, kind of looking for something to distract her from feeling a little forlorn, she saw a shop, and over the top of it, she'd never seen it before, over the top it just said, "Beginning." And when she walked inside, she felt something kind of unfamiliar. The whole place felt sort of warm and welcoming and hopeful, if that's a way you could describe a shop. And there was a person at the counter, and that person had this kind of really interesting energy. She looked at them, and it was like they seemed familiar. And she said, "Do you work here?" Which was sort of a silly question because they were sitting at the counter, and the person smiled and said, "Actually, no, I own the place." And she nodded her head and said, "Well, what do you sell here?" And the person smiled again and said, "Pretty much everything." And she looked at them and said, "Everything?" And they said, "Yeah, walk around the aisles, take a look for yourself. Take this piece of paper with you, and if you see anything you like, just write it down on the paper and come up to me, and I'll help you when you're done." And she said, "Okay." And she started walking up and down the aisles, and there was just sort of phrases describing different things with a little stock number next to them. Kind of like IKEA is how I imagine it. One of them said, world peace. One of them said, an end to hatred. One of them said, solutions to our environmental crisis. One of them said, reclaiming love. One of them said, an end to violence. There was just thing after thing after thing that were parts of what this woman had been struggling with about the world. It was like a store that that wasn't identifying the problems of the world, but was offering the solutions to everything you could imagine struggling with. And she had a pen and a piece of paper, and she was writing frantically. She was just basically writing every stock number that she came across all through the aisles. And then she came back up to the counter, and she handed her list to the person at the counter. And they looked at it, and they said, okay, all right, great. And they went underneath the counter, and they came back up with a whole bunch of packets of seeds. And she looked at the packets of seeds, and they looked at her and smiled and said, this should cover it. And she said, well, I don't understand. What is this? And the person said, these are seeds. This is a store for gardeners, for future builders. And so what you do is you take these seeds and you plant them. And you nourish them, and you care for them, and over time, kind of a long time, they grow, and then they will become what you're hoping they will become. But sometimes, it takes so long, you might not still be alive to see it. The woman actually kind of felt a little deflated. She looked at the person behind the counter. She looked at all the seeds. And you know what happened? She left. Are you surprised? A little? When I read that part of the story, because I was in the original story, I was surprised too. In fact, I was more than surprised. That is not a story for a religious educator. She left. So, here's what I think. I can relate to looking at all of the work of planting those kinds of seeds in the world and feeling completely overwhelmed by it. I can even relate with saying, I can't, and leaving the store. But in my mind, there is another chapter. So, I'm going to offer it. But before I do, I wonder if any of you have what happened next. What do you think happened after she left?
She came back like 5 minutes later to get the seeds back.
She came back 5 minutes later to get the seeds back. I like that.
She thought about it, then came back.
Yes.
She came back, but instead of getting the seeds, she said thank you, but she still left.
She came back. I love that. She came back to be like, thank you, but she still left. That's perfect. I don't know for real what happened, but what I imagine is sort of like kind of what all of you said, which is that she came back. I picture like a week later, maybe she gets into a disagreement with her neighbor and they're struggling, and she thinks, I saw on that shelf an end to separation. Maybe I could go get those seeds and try planting them and see if I can make this better. And she went back to the store and picked up those seeds. And maybe a while after that, something else came across and she went back to the store. That's how I imagine it. But the fundamental thing, the piece that we all can take away, whether or not we're ready to take the seeds and plant them, is that we have the ability. We can choose to be gardeners in the world. We can choose to put the work in to plant the seeds that make the time ahead of us a better time, a better place, that starts to change the things that we're struggling with. And I love that idea. And I love that we're all together thinking about that. And maybe together it's less work. So that's our time for today. I'm going to invite anyone who wants to go down to RE programming to come with me.
Every week at the Offertory, we each give what we are able in order to support South Church, the building, the staff, our congregants, and our greater community. In an effort coordinated by our social justice associates, each month we share the collection plate with a different nonprofit organization. During the month of January, the collection will be shared with Planned Parenthood of Northern New England, which is the largest reproductive health care and sexuality education provider and advocate in Northern New England, with health centers across Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. Their mission is to provide, promote, and protect access to reproductive health care and sexuality education so that all people can make voluntary choices about their reproductive and sexual health. You can donate in many ways. If you happen to have some cash with you, please feel free to use the collection baskets, which will be passed now. Or if you do not have any money on you, you can also use our mobile app, Vanco, or you can give via the donate link on our website, or you can send a check in the mail to our office at 73 Court Street. The offering will now be gratefully received.
Oh, we give thanks for this precious day, for all gathered here and those far away, for this time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day.
In this time of prayer and community care, we hold in our hearts the recent loss of longtime member Ed Hitchcock. May his love of this place and these people echo in our hearts, and may his departure remind us to sink deep in the love that is ours today, and the people we care about, the experiences we have, the truth we want to embody. With his spirit, perhaps accompanied by all the spirits we hold dear and that great spirit of life, let us take in these words adapted from Reverend Andy Pakula. In this time together, may we pause to feel the connection between us and to open ourselves to the love of this community. As we come together today, we become aware, once again, of the blessing of our connection to one another. In this community where loneliness can be lessened and sorrows eased, where celebration and joy can be shared, where we are free to grow into our authentic selves and toward a sacred wholeness. As we gratefully look into this circle of spirit, we also turn our attention outward to see the millions who are living lives of quiet desperation, to feel the suffering of those whose anguish is visible to us, and to remember those whose torment is outside our view. May we hear the cries of those who struggle against injustice of all kinds, who are working for peace, who are in the thick of adversity, tirelessly working for something better. Spirit of life and source of love, we dream of a world of peace and justice. We pray for the realization of that day when love becomes a palpable force. May our light shine to welcome and bless, and may we recommit ourselves to the common struggle of all, for justice and for peace and for love. Let us pray that we may be an instrument of this high calling. Amen. I now invite you into a time of personal meditation or reflection. If you wish, you can use this time to light a candle, a symbol of the Spirit within and among us. And please remember that if you are going through a difficult time, I am available, Kirsten is available, and your pastoral associates are available. If you need any one of us, please fill out a card in the pew, or call me, or email us, or talk to one of us after the service. May this time deepen and connect us to one another and to that which lives in our hearts today. Racism sits at the root of just about every other social problem we have today. It's fueled by the same forces that create classism, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and homophobia. It is made of the same divisive stuff that drives war, poverty, hopelessness, isolation. It is everywhere and also largely invisible, at least to most of us who are white. It is built on distortions and a fabric of lies that confuse, distract, and divide. Or, to put it in more positive terms, as we dismantle racism, we are simultaneously dismantling dozens of other ailments, inner and outer, over which many of us at South Church, like the woman in that story, are wringing our hands. At least that's a perspective that I heard years ago that I've been pondering over ever since. What if that were true? What if, as we dismantle racism inside and around us, everything, everywhere, all our heartfelt values that live at the center of our UU faith, all of that gets better? What if we knew that was true? As Kirsten mentioned, in the original version of that story, the woman leaves the store without buying anything. Kirsten mentioned at the time that she thought that was depressing, so she added another chapter. And I thought, who would do that? Just leave. But then, on reflection, I thought, well, perhaps someone who's not aware of just what is possible, or who doesn't believe it, or is too discouraged, or too busy, or both. Either way, that would be too bad. We could use more people who can see the significance of what they do, that even things that appear small can make a big difference for good. We are living in times where hopeful visions can seem out of reach. We look around and we may not like what we see, but problems look so big and hard we don't know what to do. On the racial front, things appear to be getting worse rather than better. The wealth gap continues to widen between Black people and white people in this country. Critical race theory bans shut down dialogue that fosters understanding, and worldwide, we are living in a time in which political leaders are using divisive, thinly veiled racist and Islamophobic ideas to rally their followers. Rabbi Sanford Reagan writes, "You can tell a lot by a nation by who it chooses to honor. If you know who the heroes and heroines of a nation are, you know something about its soul, its dreams, and its nightmares. Sometimes the best and sometimes the worst is shown in those choices. But they are always very revealing. Gandhi expresses part of the soul of India. Mandela expresses the best part of the soul of South Africa. Both are beacons of light and inspirations for their homeland and the world's." So I wonder, what does this country's choice of leaders and heroes say about us? While it would be a stretch to say that this country is honoring Donald Trump, The fact of his existence, his resurgence, and his popularity are real. What does that say about our collective dreams and nightmares? But then, on the other hand, this country has institutionalized a holiday for Martin Luther King Jr., civil rights icon, courageous leader, and inspired advocate for justice and equality. What does that say? We project, Reagan suggests, our thoughts, fears, and hopes onto our leaders, our best and our worst. We look to them to reflect parts of ourselves. But it is also true that they reinforce parts of ourselves, a feedback loop of sorts in which we lift up certain people and they call out qualities in the people they lead, which reinforce the qualities in the leader and then reinforce those again in their people. Kind of like mutually watering seeds. So I wonder what seeds are being watered in us and in the people around us. And I wonder what seeds we want to water. Thich Nhat Hanh extends this seed metaphor. He says, your mind is like a piece of land planted with many different kinds of seeds. Seeds of joy, peace, mindfulness, understanding, and love. And also seeds of craving, anger, fear, hate, and forgetfulness. These wholesome and unwholesome seeds are always there, sleeping in the soil of your mind. And the quality of your life depends upon the seeds you water. If you plant tomato seeds in your garden, tomatoes will grow. And just so, if you plant a seed of peace in your mind, peace will grow. When the seeds of happiness in you are watered, you will become happy. When seeds of anger are watered, you will become angry. The seeds that are watered frequently are those that will grow strong. I appreciate the image of our minds being full of a large variety of seeds, wholesome and unwholesome. Forgive me. Virtuous and problematic. It's a powerful image that means even more to me because it implies that Thich Nhat Hanh himself, one of the most respected peacemakers in the world, carried challenging, unfavorable seeds within himself, which he then learned to work with. I appreciate it because it reminds me that I, as much as anyone else, have problematic seeds I need to work with. While I have a keen eye for seeing the seeds in other people, seeing divisive rhetoric and racist behavior that calls that out in a leader's followers, while I have no problem recognizing flaws in other people that they really ought to do something about, this framing invites me into the humbling awareness that I've got it too. That I carry my own unwholesome seeds, in this case, frankly, in the form of judgment and intolerance of other people who I see as the problem. It helps me to remember that focusing on other people's racism, bias, aggression, or bad behavior and comparing myself favorably to them while it makes me feel good doesn't actually help. And actually fuels the root of the problem, which is this us versus them paradigm. So I need to look at the seeds that live in my own mind, including seeds of racism. Many planted long ago. I think about my home country, the Netherlands, which has long been a paragon of social equity in my mind. The Netherlands has a wonderful public healthcare system, subsidized higher education, strong, affordable housing. It is a country that has long prioritized human rights, tolerance, and the well-being of all its people. And they just voted in a right-wing populist leader who stands for a lot of things that are not what I just listed. He is using inflammatory language to rally people around anti-immigration. His election is shocking to me, although maybe it shouldn't be. The Netherlands has a long history of imperialism. The Dutch were ourselves involved in the slave trade for over 200 years. My people bought into that same doctrine of discovery, ideology of superiority and domination that played out here. The idea of white culture, my culture, as better than others, and I wonder what seeds did all that plant in me and in my people. And I wonder what other attitudes I hold about people who don't look like me or who were not raised exactly the way I was or who do not think exactly the way I do. How do those still live in me? There is history that has planted problematic seeds in people all over the world. But while those seeds have been there for a long time, something in our modern era is bringing them out. What is it in the soil that is fertilizing these particular seeds at this particular time? I also read that in Finland they have voted in the most right-wing government in the stretch of their modern history. And they used to be seen as one of the most liberal countries in the world. What is it about the current climate that is fostering this aggression, division, and problematic kinds of thinking everywhere? Last Sunday, Kirsten talked about living in apocalyptic times. Last Sunday, I was at a workshop. And while the word apocalypse was not mentioned there, words like upheaval, crisis, instability, and turmoil were all there in the air. There was awareness that the heat has been turning up in more ways than one. I'm thinking of that proverbial frog in the pot of water that gets hotter and hotter. But unlike the frog who doesn't notice and doesn't leap out in time, humans have the capacity to notice and to feel. And the heat has been turning up. And what many are feeling is fear. And what fear does is crave safety. Fear craves a leader who sounds strong, appears powerful, acts forcefully, a leader who promises relief and promises to protect you. Fear shuts down imagination and flexible thinking, shuts down the ability to take in nuance and the ability to see further down the road. Fear can get humans to act outside of their own best interests and to act against each other. And on a more interpersonal level, fear can turn us against each other, turn up frustrations, turn up our desire to avoid each other, to blame other people, to blame leaders rather than looking into our own hearts and taking hopeful actions. We live in unprecedented, uneasy times. And the leaders who are coming to power, everyone who say they'll make it better, their fear-mongering, divisive approach is bound to make it worse. King lived in unprecedented, uneasy times. The king was a leader, and while he had power, he did not promise safety. And while he was forceful, it was a soul force, not a dominating force. And while he was strong, he did not offer comfort. Instead, he invited others to be strong too. And he invited everyone to practice love. Not, in his words, a sentimental, anemic love, not a fuzzy, affectionate-only kind of love, but a powerful love that dissolves the violence spawned by fear through that sheer strength of soul force. King preached a liberating love that frees the receiver and the giver together, a love that brings us together. As I was writing this sermon, I was picturing a love that dismantles racism at its root by dismantling the lie that there are good people and bad people rather than good people, good behaviors and bad behaviors, bad ideas and problematic seeds. It undoes the division between us and them, racist and enlightened ones, and instead it puts us all in the same boat, united against bad patterns rather than bad people, united against fearful climates, united, you might even say, against division itself. But King was about more than just changing hearts. He was about action. In King's time, that meant changing laws, segregation laws, voting laws, civil rights laws. In our time, it's not about changing laws. It's about protecting the rule of law itself. One of the speakers at the conference I went to mentioned in an almost offhand way that Hitler was elected and reminded us that there is one candidate who, if voted into office, will imperil the democratic process, imperil the rule of law itself, will put at risk the choices and lives of countless people, and threaten just about every value that lives at the center of our UU faith. That same speaker gently suggested this might be a good year to get involved in electoral politics. Sometimes the very difficulty of a thing can become a motivator. The sheer apparent impossibility brings us together because we are finally willing to admit we can't do it alone. We need one another. The soul of a nation is determined by who its people choose to follow, is a reflection of its nightmares, but also the possibility of its dreams. So who do we choose to love? Can we choose to turn back into that seed store, look at the shelves and see all the things we have wanted for so long, world peace, the safety and beauty and preciousness of our world preserved, the unification and ending of all kinds of oppressions and divisions that sit between us? Let's choose love. Let's build bridges. Let's take action, sidestep seeds of discouragement, and cultivate seeds of understanding and action. Let us plant the seeds and build the dream. How is love calling you today? Let us join together in our closing hymn. It is Hush, number 1040. Please rise in body or in spirit.
Hush, hush, somebody's calling. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? Sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do?
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Our benediction words are from Rebbe Nachman of Breslov. Let the good in me connect with the good in others until all the world is transformed through the compelling power of love. May it be so. Amen.